we go. All right, my mic is on. Welcome, everyone, to the Moore County Board of Education work session on August 3rd, 2026 at 1:30 p.m., just a little bit later than that. I want to just take a minute to read our mission statement. Moore County Schools will graduate students with the skills, knowledge, character, critical thinking, and education needed to become proud and successful Americans. So welcome, everyone. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda? Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you very much. That passes. And we have Mr. Hensley with us on the phone, and Ms. Davis could not attend today. So at this time, Mr. Benway, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? And I'll just lead us in a moment of silence. All right, thank you very much. And so we're now at item 2, board training, and I'll turn it over to Mrs. Purvis.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Brandon McPherson. He's from Pointer Spruill. He is our new board counsel. We appreciate him being here today. Because he's new, I'm new, he wanted to go ahead and make himself known to our board, to go over just a little bit of board training so that we are all on the same page as we head into the new school year. So, Mr. McPherson, we'll let you take it over.
Board, I am a walker and a talker, and I'm going to try my best to follow Charlie's advice and stay close to this microphone, which I think because it's red means it can catch me. Excellent. I feel very far away from all of you right now, which is a little unnatural for me, but we'll go with it. My name is Brandon McPherson. I'm a partner with Pointer Spruill. We have a group of education lawyers that represents several school districts throughout North Carolina. I have had the privilege of practicing education law my entire career. I thoroughly enjoy the practice of education law, and I think I can provide an explanation as to why. I grew up in Sneeds Grove, North Carolina, which is the northern unincorporated part of Scotland County, not far from here. I grew up on chicken farms. All of my uncles had chicken farms. I was migrant labor, which meant they did not pay me a dime, and I got to have lots of meals with my cousins. But my parents instilled in me at a young age the importance of an education. My dad was a maintenance worker for the Scotland County Schools. My mom worked at Abbott Laboratories at the time and most of my formative years, and then for the local hospital. And I had the privilege to go with the education I was provided by the Scotland County Schools to NC State, where I graduated with honors from NC State and went to Campbell Law. And while I was attending Campbell Law, I became fascinated with the North Carolina General Assembly, and I spent some time working in the North Carolina House for my elected member, and I worked on education appropriations for 2 legislative sessions. One of the things I like to say is that my passion for education goes across the board. Now, while I never taught in the classroom, I've been working in and around education since I became an adult. And so I have thoroughly enjoyed the practice of education law. I have a very straightforward style. As I told Jenny and Dr. Calcutt and Mr. Benway, I'm Brandon McPherson. That's the only person I can be. If you're expecting me to be somebody else, I'm sorry. You're just not going to get that. I'm me all day long. I have the privilege of being the father of 3 boys with my wife, Kelsey. Charlie, Jack, and Henry. Charlie is 10, Jack is 7, Henry is 4. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys just a preemptive statement. I answer my phone all times of day, all times of night. If you hear my kids in the background, please understand my earpiece is in my ear. They can't hear a thing you're saying. But just know that is the way I operate. I thoroughly want you to understand how much of a privilege it is for me to work with you. I have wanted to work with the Moore County Schools for the better part of 6 years. Once I knew it was a possibility, I have been lobbying my firm to get you guys as a client. And so it is very much a privilege for me personally to stand before you and to be able to represent you. I say all of that to say we're going to start off with a presentation about your board policies that you've probably heard more than one time. You probably know these rules better than I do. The reason we're starting here is because these are your rules that I will do my best as a parliamentarian and the board attorney to ensure with Jenny's help, Ms. Purvis's help, that they are implemented. But if you don't like your rules and it's not against the law, you change your rules. They're yours. They're not mine. They're not Ms. Purvis's. With that as my introduction, is there anything you guys want to say or ask me from the outset? I am pumped to be, yeah, well, just know, I had to lobby 3 different clients to ensure that I was available for your board meetings. And I had to move meetings to make sure that I was available for your board meetings. I treat you guys as a priority, and I hope you see that and you feel that. With that being said, I told Jenny I was going to get to this, but let's get going with where we're trying to get to. All right, what we're going to talk about. The board's authority, the board's job. What are you supposed to be doing? We're going to talk about meeting procedures, how agendas are built based off your board policies. We're going to talk about and reinforce compliance and communication and technology. And we're also going to talk about how we deal with complaints, along with ethics, conflicts of interest, and confidentiality rules. I have been assured that you guys are really good at all of these things. And so because of that, we are going to take a soft touch on some of this stuff because you've heard it lots of times. At the same time, if you have questions, let me know. So, board authority and governance. Let's talk about it. So this is policy 1010, which is school board authority and duties. So board members have the authority only when acting as a group. This guy, you guys know, generally speaking, that the only time you can do anything is when you're acting as a body or a subcommittee of the body that's appointed by the body. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So individually, members, while you have what I like to call as a bully pulpit, you get people pay attention to you because you're an elected official. When you say stuff, people pay attention, but at the end of the day, your words are not binding on the rest of the board. There is an exception to that rule, and that is to your elected fearless leader that you choose every year. Currently, that's Dr. Calcott. She can at times be the spokesperson for the board. Additionally, Ms. Purvis, she can serve as your spokesperson. Outside of that, once again, you are individual members. My hope is when you speak publicly that you will identify that you are speaking individually, but if not, please understand that the board is happy to disown anything you say. It is the joy and privilege of not only this policy, but operating a school board in the state of North Carolina. Okay, so what are you doing? You're trying to provide a sound basic education to every kid in your jurisdiction. Well, what's your jurisdiction? The Moore County Schools. And any kid who applies outside of the Moore County Schools to come to Moore County. And you guys let them in because you have such a great school district. Okay? So, you want to have high academic standards. You want to hold students, staff, and the administration accountable to the standards you set. Part of your job. The other part of your job is allowing your staff to do their job, and we'll get to that in a second. But also, you approve a budget, and you present it to the county commissioners for their approval. You hire, support, and evaluate the superintendent. If I had to sum up your three responsibilities very quickly, you have three. You adopt policy, you hire, support, and evaluate the superintendent, and you pass a budget. Those are the three biggies. Everything else is either an offshoot of one of these or related thereto. That make sense? Yeah. All right. Board and superintendent relations. When I think about this, I think about how it is very easy to do things or try to do things in the most well-intentioned way possible. I have lots of good intentions with my children that tend to go to pot. I have seen in lots of situations where the good intentions of school board members to fix things, help things, deal with complaints, deal with issues, ends up to more problems, more issues, more complaints. Here's where I want to lay out, based off your board policies, the way the world works. You are the legislative policy-making body. That is your job. The implementation of that legislative policy arm is the superintendent. Passing policy, executing. I also like to think about this like there's a vision, superintendent executes the vision. Who's the only individual you guys evaluate personally? Superintendent. Guess what direct accountability looks like? It looks like that. So, with all that being said, clear lines, okay? You also get to act as the last line in a string of processes, but we'll talk about that in a second. But it's the concept of you are the highest level. Then it's the superintendent and the rest of the massive, wonderful, life-altering educational institution known as the Moore County Schools. So, superintendent's job is to keep you informed about what's going on. That's essentially how we operate. Meetings and procedures. Remote participation in board meetings. This is a one that I think you may want to consider whether or not you are actually using this the way it's written. I have some opinions about this policy if anyone ever wants to ask, but the way it works right now is physical attendance is strongly encouraged, remote participation authorized subject to the open meetings law, meaning you can participate, but with limited abilities. It is wholly remote meetings are only permitted in state declared emergencies. Your permissible reasons for remote participation under the policy are illness, travel, child care, family emergency, weather, military service, scheduling conflict. Okay? That's pretty broad. But with all that being said, do you guys like this policy? Do you like the way it's structured? And does it work for you? You must use audio, video, text, instant message, email alone is not acceptable. Anybody want to ask why that doesn't work? Because that's sort of one of those things I think is self-explanatory, but contemporaneous communication is the best way for someone to attend something or to at least listen to it. You don't want to be at a technological disadvantage to the point at which you're not really seeing and hearing what all is going on at the same time. Make sense? Okay. Emergencies and procedures. Remote members generally are not counted in the quorum except for in state of emergencies, when generally, I will tell you, having attended lots of state of emergency meetings, everybody's remote. But generally speaking, you're not counted in the quorum. The chair initiates the contact and announces the remote participant. Dr. Calcutt did that today. Thank you, Mr. Hensley, for participating, by the way. I hope you can hear me. Technical difficulties that's a you guys' decision about if the technical difficulties become too big of an obstacle, you can choose to end that remote participation. Generally speaking, the person on the other end of the phone often makes that decision. Like, I have had members who are just like, I've gotten to a place where I don't have cell phone reception, my internet went out, whatever, I can't participate, they drop off. Remote member bears their own connection cost. That makes perfect sense to me. Just sort of a common sense approach. Closed sessions. I like to think about closed sessions as this wonderful time where we get to talk about a select group of topics in depth that you guys are privileged to hear and know about as a body. The one that is most common, the one that you guys are going to get a lot of, is personnel. Personnel is omnipresent. Personnel is something you guys deal with regularly. It is also the most common topic that we're going to talk about that's confidential. Additionally, attorney-client privilege, meaning specific matters that our relationship dictates that the rest of the world doesn't get to know about. That privilege is something I take very seriously. You guys are the possessor of that privilege as a body. I do not possess that privilege. You are the client. The client owns the privilege. Personnel matters, criminal investigations, real property negotiations. I've had an uptick in those. I think to the extent that real property negotiation is simply me or Ms. Purvis updating you about what's going on in the negotiation. Now, the consummation of those property negotiations takes place in open session, right? If we're approving a real estate contract, we're approving it in open session. If we are spending public money pursuant to that contract, depending on the nature of that contract, it may require a motion or a budget amendment that has to be done in open session to move money around, depending on how big or how much money you're spending on a piece of dirt. Does that make sense? The other thing is school safety plans. I take this one deathly seriously. I think is one of the most important things you guys review and do, which is the safety components of every school improvement plan. These are the plans that your schools operate under when things get bad. And taking those seriously and keeping those confidential, I think is extraordinary importance. Thus far, I've not had a board member attempt to treat those anything with less than the most urgency possible. But if they did, we can deal with it from there. But honest to goodness, one of the most important jobs you do annually. You enter in by majority vote of the members present. You must be in open session reporting settlements, final actions on appointment, discharge or removal from a case. So, that's where I come in a lot, is when we're talking about settlements. Those settlements get reported out. I'll tell you, I typically do not report out settlements until all the ink is dry by all parties, and it's either been shared with the tribunal that has an obligation to approve them, or it's been finalized to the point that you are now bound by them. Does that make sense? I think preemptive releasing of settlement information can put you at a disadvantage. But it does get reported. It does not get reported until it's final. No reporting except by the board attorney for minutes, and I will tell you, I don't record closed sessions. I don't use my phone. I don't do any of that. That is the old-fashioned way. I will also tell you that I will be working with Ms. Parker for closed session minutes. I think it is more efficient. the person who writes and styles your minutes on a regular basis, unless you need to excuse her from the meeting for whatever reason, to which I will take back primary responsibility for closed session minutes. But she will be your primary drafter, I will be the primary editor, and then they will be shared with you for you to review, to say, yes, I agree with these closed session minutes, no, I don't agree with these closed session minutes. Any questions about that? Okay. Board meeting agendas. The chairperson and the superintendent prepare the proposed agenda. The agenda requests are due at least 6 working days before the meeting. This is the new proposal that we've been talking about, which is members will receive the agenda 7 days prior to the meeting. Public inspection will continue to be 3 days prior to the meeting. So you will get it 4 days before the public does. Does that make sense? Excellent. Now, this is not the current policy. This is the new proposal that's going to be put into place. Work session items go automatically on consent agenda. That's what your policy says. Any 3 members may pull an item from consent for separate consideration on your action agenda, or wherever they so choose, right? So if you want to pull something off of the consent agenda, generally it would go to the action agenda. But if for whatever reason the majority of the board feels like it should go someplace else, we can talk about that. But that's a procedural question in real time. Member presentations, route through the superintendent 6 days, then committee. Any questions about the board agenda process? Okay. Rules of order. I really like your rules of order policy, by the way. I think it's very clear. It's wonderful. It also doesn't overcomplicate the process. Robert's Rules of Order were built for parliaments, just so everybody knows. This is not a parliament. You guys can see each other, and we can see raising of hands. The procedures you have written down in your Rules of Order make perfect sense to me. To the extent we are going to stick to the 4 corners of that, we are going to. If we need to go to Robert's Rules, it'll be the Robert's Rules for small boards. We're not going to go searching into the hinterlands. But the board proceeds by motion. Motion requires a second. You guys know all this. The chairman presides. They rule on motions. They rule on order. They call the recesses. They refer things to committee. Chair rules are appealable to a simple majority. Does that make sense? Yes, ma'am.
Brandon, if you would, just for my clarity and
Yes.
maybe for board members,
Yes.
talk to us about how the Robert's Rules of Orders for small boards might be different than what we've used in the past, or is that exactly what we've used in the past? How does that look different from the full scale?
So the full-scale Robert's Rules of Order are meant for a parliament, right? They have detailed, when we talk about Robert's Rules of Order for a small board, it is how deep are we going into determining whether or not something is out of order? Are we doing clincher votes? Are we putting ourselves in a situation where we are over-formalizing a situation? The majority of this board will run meetings, right? You will get to determine, unless you have a policy that requires 2/3 or 3/4 of the board for whatever reason. But you get to dictate the rules. I will tell you, generally speaking, it's going to be hard for us, based on your board policy on rules of order, to get to Robert's Rules. Because you need motions, you need seconds, the chair presides. The only thing that I would say that is relatively straightforward is what happens if the chair doesn't reside. And then, in that case, the vice chair resides or presides. And so when we talk about simplifying the way you do business, it's because you have a small board and do not need overly formal parliamentary procedures. It's motions, it's seconds. If the board chooses to move something from consideration for that evening, it's very simple. The board votes to remove it from consideration. If they vote to table something, which is different from removing for consideration. We can talk about that, but if you table something, it moves it to the next meeting. Or if you move it to reconsideration, that's something that has to be brought up by a member of the prevailing side. And I'm not getting overly technical here. These are straightforward, simple rules that, while are based in Robert's rules, are built for small boards. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I know in conversations with some of board members, one of the things that has come up is, in talking about creating our agendas.
Yes.
And what we might want to have on the agenda for a work session. Wanting to make sure that we're not running astray of the open meetings laws, but that we have the ability to talk about, is this something we want on the agenda? Is this something we need to put there or not? I guess question that kind of came up is, how do we have some conversation about what goes on the agenda without working outside of the opens meeting laws? Where and how can that take place?
Sure. Two ways. Generally, because of the size of your board, I would say if you're interested in having a particular item on the board agenda, your rules allow for that to be simply added by contacting the superintendent and or the board chair to potentially have it added. If it's a matter of controversy, I would say make sure there's at least 3 members that want something added to the agenda to have it considered. Outside of that as a principle or a concept, when we comes to wanting to have discussion, I personally believe that when you engage in a conversation via email, that is not a open meetings violation. So if you guys get on an email chain and you want to say, I'd like this item versus this item, that is not a violation of open meetings law. It's not contemporaneous enough. It is very different from text messaging. Text messaging is a different animal. But I will say that if you do not want to use email and you do not want to meet in smaller groups, maybe you have something less than a majority of the board get together to have conversation about the items. The thing I would say is making sure that that grouping of people is not a consistently meeting group of 2 or 3 people. Does that make sense? Because then it looks like we're intentionally meeting in small groups to avoid the open meetings law. And it looks a lot like an unofficial committee. So those are some ways. I personally like the communication via email about agenda items. I also, committee are a great way to actually review and move things from idea to concept to board item. And my understanding is you have a very active policy committee. That makes sense to me. But certainly there are items that don't fit neatly in your policy or your other committees. So occasionally you're just going to have to engage in conversation, whether that's phone calls, whether it's emails, whether it's ensuring that your smaller bodies. Now, I'll tell you one of the best ways to get together and engage in a conversation about general topics that is permissible under the open meetings law is board retreats. And when you have a board retreat, your overarching concepts are strategic plan or district participation in certain things. And it's a little bit more free-flowing. It's open to the public. You're allowed to have this conversation about general topics because, once again, it's open to the public. But the idea is that it is not a item A, item B, item C on the agenda. It's here are items that are a part of the strategic plan, that are part of Moore County Schools that we want to talk about in concept before they become an agenda item. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Let me reinforce that just a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
In the past, we found ourselves in a position where some issue has arisen. in the past, we found ourselves where situations have arisen, and we really don't know what the left and right parameters of the issue is. We find ourselves kind of in a discovery mode, if you will.
Sure.
And we've had some great difficulties with that in probably overly strict open meetings laws that kind of prohibited that needed exchange of information among more than three of us, perhaps. So I think what you're describing here kind of fixes that.
It does, and I'll tell you, I have boards that have one of those per semester. It often provides me an opportunity to engage with you guys in specific topics that are relevant at the time, or specific things that we want to talk about. For example, I tend to do either a legislative update or a legal update at the fall presentation when we have a budget, when we have things to talk about that are particularly relevant to you guys. In the spring, I tend to talk about personnel and investigations and roles of the board in both personnel issues, problems. And so I think I can help facilitate those. But the retreat is this great opportunity for you to talk about the overarching issues that you need to address in Moore County schools. And that's what you tell the public, by the way. And they're welcome to come and sit in on it. But that tends to be the issue.
Thank you, sir.
I had a quick clarification, just to make sure I'm
For sure.
getting this right. So, considering items to be added to the agenda, we're talking about over email, we can discuss whether or not the worthiness of it being added to the agenda, but not diving into the topic itself through email, correct?
Right. Like you
Okay.
just say, hey, I don't see X on here. I'd like to have that considered. And it either makes it on the agenda or it doesn't make it on the agenda. If three members want it on the agenda, it makes its way on the agenda.
And that was my next question. That 3-member, is that in our policy? Is that a
I
guideline?
think so. I
I
don't,
can't remember that 3-member. I thought it was just one.
that's for consent.
Like to be
agenda.
add something to the
I will
agenda, it's
tell
just
you-
for single.
That, yeah,
That's typically,
yeah.
Yeah.
So then, I'm sorry, I spoke out of order.
no, that's okay.
No,
yeah.
a single member can have something added to the agenda with notification of the chair.
Okay, just want to make sure I had that right. Yep.
I apologize. All right. Communications and technology. I will tell you, you guys have very robust versions of both of these policies. Electronic messaging, by the way, this policy exists because it has become an issue. So typically policies don't exist to just exist. So the thing I would say is exercise caution when communicating electronically amongst yourselves. Be prepared that any time that the public or interested members of the public may ask or request for copies of your text messages that relate to public business, I'm not suggesting that they are always entitled to your text messages, but you are a public official, and if you have conducted public business on your phone and there's evidence of it, what you will get is you will get an email from me that there's been a public records request requesting your text messages on a particular topic. Based off of the oath that each of you took, I will then ask you to produce those. You either produce them or you don't produce them. By the way, I am not going to personally evaluate your credibility and your ability to review your phone. That's your phone. That's your personal privacy issue. But just realize that I have had situations where individuals are asking for public records to just prove the fact that you were going to say they don't exist, and then they get published in the newspaper that they clearly do exist. So just, this is not made up stuff. I've had this happen on more than one occasion. So, word of caution, if you're going to engage in public business, just be prepared to have your stuff asked for. I would also say that engaging in communications with members of the audience during board meetings that are conducting a public business. I'm not talking about the congratulations to a particular principal. I'm not talking about way to go or the fun emoji or the meme. Like I don't consider those where you're giving staff members high fives for good stuff. I don't consider that necessarily at all times conducting public business. But if you're literally communicating with the public in real time, we're going to talk about whether or not you violated your own policy or not. Does that make sense? Okay. Board member technology use systems. As we all know, you have been issued school system devices. They have been scanned. Thank you, sir. There is no expectation of privacy on school system devices. Those are the property of the Moore County Schools. They are given to you as an asset for you to use. They have an asset tag on them. I will say I've had more than one occasion where board members had their assets damaged or destroyed or stolen. So that's things outside of your control. But just realize that, we take good care of our stuff. The personnel may monitor and have access to your stuff. So if this is your school district computer, use it for school district business. I had a board member tell me one time that they had all their grandchildren's pictures on there, and that because it got dropped in the water, we should, do everything we can to make sure that she preserves her photos. And while I very much agree that, we'll do our best to preserve whatever's there, the picture shouldn't have been on there in the first place. And so that's the thing I would like to remind people of. Personal things for personal use, school business things for school business use. Kind of straightforward. Social media. Exercise good judgment and being mindful of your ethical obligations. This is your board policy. I'm just simply reiterating what your board policy says. Do not post confidential or student or employee school business information on the internet. This is a common sense issue. You guys are special. You get to receive privileged information. Because you do get to receive that information, I respectfully request, in the interest of those individuals, both the employees, the students, the community writ large, that you get this access to, please keep it confidential. I will tell you that the other side is a far more complicated, and we can talk horror stories, but just please don't make it an issue. I've been reassured by Ms. Purvis that you guys do not have a problem with that. And so just know how much I appreciate that at the outset of keeping closed session information confidential. So, remember that each one of you has your own First Amendment rights. Let me tell you that at the outset. Nobody's trying to deprive any of you of your First Amendment rights to go speak outside. At the board table, though, it's the board's voice. You interact as a board. You've made a commitment to each other to engage in civil conversation. There will be disagreement. There will be arguments. There will be heated discussions. My request is that we model civility as best we can for the students and staff members that look to you for your leadership. It's not always going to be that way. Sometimes we're going to make mistakes. But at the end of the day, my hope is that we engage in that conversation at the board table. What you do when you're not at the board table, that's your First Amendment protected speech. We're not here to regulate that.
I have a question before we move on. Can we
Yes,
go
ma'am.
back to that slide?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so one of your bullet points says no libel, defamation, harassment, or bullying. I would like clear definitions of the scope of all those things and whether they apply only to how we treat each other or whether they apply to constituents and how we treat constituents.
Okay.
And I assure you that this is a relevant question.
Okay. I will tell you, I think the intent of this particular item on libel, defamation, harassment, and bullying is about how you treat each other, was the intent. Now, whether or not an individual board member engages in libel, defamation, harassment, or bullying outside of their board duties in their personal life is between them and whomever they are making that conduct towards. Okay? So if you're executing your board duties and you are defaming someone as a part of a duty of the board, it is potentially a problem. And what are your duties as board members? You attend board meetings regularly. You attend events as a board member in your official capacity. But there are very few times when you are speaking as a board member exclusively. And oftentimes that is at the board table. First Amendment protections protect each one of you when you are engaged in what I like to call the arena. And the arena is often social media, it is websites, it is places where political speech is engaged in. And when that happens, unless it is directly related to a duty of the board that is of the utmost importance, I will tell you political speech is one of the most highly protected areas of constitutional law. Political speech is more protected than just about, I would say just about anything, as far as individuals' opinions about persons.
So what makes speech political as opposed to personal? If, one of us were to defame a constituent, what would enable us to claim that was political or not? What's the boundary there?
Whether or not it's political or not, is it on its face? For example, if someone is engaged in political speech on a campaign page, that campaign page is political speech. And unless and until a judge rules that that somehow is directly connected to their service and their obligations as a school board member, I would argue that that is political speech that is protected. Ethics and confidentiality. Here's the code of ethics. We obey applicable state and federal laws for official actions. We are to uphold integrity and independence in the office and avoid impropriety. We're to conduct affairs openly in open meetings and public records. Attend and prepare for meetings to make informed decisions after a full public discussion. Respect confidentiality. Delegate to the administration, to the superintendent. Only the chair and the superintendent speak for the board. That's the one I like to remind people of. Is that when bad things happen, you will get a microphone shoved in your face. My request is that if you're going to speak, make sure you speak on your individual capacity. Hi, I'm Brandon McPherson. I'm the board attorney. I'm speaking in my personal capacity, not as the board attorney for blah, blah. By the way, that's never going to happen. If anybody calls me, I'm referring it to the PIO, superintendent, or the chair. Unless you guys tell me you want me to talk to somebody, and then I'll talk to them. But, I keep my mouth shut.
Mr. McPherson, when you have a minute, we can finish with this part, but Mr. Hensley has a question. He'll,
Absolutely.
okay?
I'm done with this slide, so I'm happy to hear Mr. Hensley's question.
So first of all, I'm a bit behind. I was watching on YouTube because the phone is a little faint, so I think my question is a little bit in arrears. I was going to object to Ms. Board Member Dahl's questioning because, she's asking about stuff that the attorney made very clear was outside of the scope of board functioning. It sounded like she was trying to get free legal advice. So I was going to stop that line of questioning, but by the time I got recognized, and again, I was watching on YouTube, so it was delayed, they'd already moved on. But that was That's what I want to talk about.
All right, thank you, sir.
So we're good?
Also, I guess Cindy, can I get a little more volume on the phone here, because I was listening via YouTube. It's just faint where YouTube's very clear. Okay, all right, thank you. That's all.
Okay. Board member conflict of interest. Just to be clear, you guys are public officials in the state of North Carolina, which means you have limitations and potential criminal implications anytime you engage in potential conflict of interest. It's very straightforward, the conflict of interest laws. So no personal gain via intimidation, undue influence, or misuse of employees. No direct benefit from school system contracts. That is anything that you or your spouse has a 10% ownership or income in. I have counties that I work in that are small counties. You guys do not fall into that situation. There are exceptions for places that are smaller. That ain't y'all. Y'all got family members' employment, recusal from deliberation, vote, or influence. That's standard operating procedure. What I would recommend to you is, if you are going to recuse yourself, that be said at the board table. And you should probably tell the chair in advance, but if you choose not to, that's up to you. But at least announce it at the board table. That way, both the public and your other members know, hi, I'm recusing myself from consideration. Does that make sense? Okay. Being a nonprofit director or officer, recuse yourself from the contracts of those nonprofits. Makes perfect sense to me. Hope that makes perfect sense to you guys. Gifts are limited to $50 nominal unsolicited, $100 in the aggregate over 12 months. That's relatively straightforward. No gifts from E-rate providers. No misuse of non-public information. Meaning, if you figure out in closed session that there's a high school going in across the street before the rest of the world knows, and the lot across the street from it is up for sale, using that information, that privileged information, to go acquire that piece of property across the street is a problem. Does that make sense? Okay.
I had a follow-up question here.
Sure.
My wife is principal, recently named principal of Aberdeen Elementary School.
Sure.
I believe she'll be here this afternoon even. So recusal from deliberation. So is that anything regarding Aberdeen Elementary that I should recuse myself from that conversation, or?
I would not consider it that broad.
Okay.
You get to use your own professional judgment on this. As board counsel, what I would advise all board members is, whenever the thing that is very clear is consideration of anything related to your wife or her income, or personnel matters related to your wife, I would say that would be the line where the board policy speaks.
Okay.
Beyond that is a case-by-case determination.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Confidential information. Absolute duty to maintain confidentiality is required by law. When you're unsure if the information is protected, ask the superintendent, ask the board attorney. Okay? I always prefer to err on the side of, I'm going to keep my mouth shut about it until I'm assured that I can talk about it. Because the problem is, if you share and you weren't supposed to, it's like getting toothpaste back in the tube. I know you guys know this. This is not news. Also, the information you guys tend to deal with is both impactful on children and impactful on adults. When I say impactful on children, you guys find out about the really awful things and sometimes the really great things that happen to kids. And because of that, that means that you are a possessor of certain amounts of knowledge that has a direct impact on children's lives. Similarly, the individuals, the parents, are looking to you to ensure that that information is held confidentially. Also, teachers, whenever you receive information about teachers and employees, that information has implications not only for them, but also the students in their classrooms or at their school where they're the administrator. So think about the second tier potential implications if, for whatever reason, you share confidential information. That's all I ask. Does that make sense? I like to call that downstream issues. Complaints. You guys, you receive so many complaints. Everybody loves to come to complain to you guys. You have a policy that directs how those complaints are to be addressed. And I want to point out that I think it's a very solid policy. The board commits to effective means for parents and communities to voice concerns. What does that look like? That looks like public comment, and it looks like the opportunity for public hearings on specific topics. For example, if you are opening a new school and you have to redraw the lines for those schools, having a hearing to hear from the public about where you drew the lines, always an interesting conversation. Complaints should be addressed at the level closest to the origin of the problem. This is one of these things that it's really easy to step in an unintentional problem by engaging in problem solving that's not meant for you. Okay, by way of example, you get a complaint from a teacher that their first year principal is not being a good listener and doesn't understand how things work at their school. Quote, how things work. Okay? Your auto response needs to be something like, thank you for reaching out. I am sharing your concern with the administration. That's it. Do not express empathy. Do not tell them they're right. Do not consider that you have or no knowledge about that first year principal. That is directly to the administration. The reason for that is the superintendent is charged with supervising the principals. And that is the person who is meant to address that concern. And whether or not that is actually a complaint, or if there is an issue, could be used against each one of you in the future. If you get overly empathetic with an employee via email, I have had this happen more than one time, where I am presenting a dismissal case in front of a board of education, and then the plaintiff's lawyer, the teacher's lawyer, brings up an email that is from the board vice chair or the chair of the personnel committee. And it says, you know, the way you're being treated isn't right, or we're going to look into this and make sure it gets addressed. Something as vague as that gets interpreted as, well, y'all clearly knew something was wrong because you said it needed to, quote, be addressed. We don't know if it needs to be addressed at all, because you've got this vague complaint. That vague complaint needs to go to Ms. Purvis for her to address it. That's that. And the other side of this is it can potentially, quite frankly, likely will end up in your lap anyway. And in those situations, if you've already engaged in any sort of conversation with folks, you need to pull yourself out of consideration. You say, hey, I can't sit impartially and hear this one. That makes sense? Cool. There are certain things that have different types, specific policies. Title IX, for example. Title IX, whenever you hear sexual harassment, that is Title IX. That gets sent to a specific set of individuals with special training for how that's supposed to go. Disability, 504, ADA, IDEA, all those things. Very active parental organizations around this. They will attempt to couch you or put you in particular camps or bait you into saying things to them that either demonstrate your opinion or otherwise disqualify you from considering things. Or I've had this on more than one occasion where a board member knows a parent, and a parent is communicating with that board member while they're in negotiations with the school district over an IDEA complaint, and they're feeding the board member half information, and then the board member is taking that additional information from the parent into closed session without a filter and without the knowledge of the rest of the board. So if you essentially engage in a whole conversation with this parent and you're bringing that conversation into closed session, not to the benefit of the board. So I like to say, everything you think is a good thing could potentially turn into a bad thing and could ruin negotiations, could otherwise put you guys at a legal disadvantage. So do not personally resolve complaints. Establish a process. You have established processes for informal resolution. I will tell you, not every complaint that is received deserves a grand inquisition. It is not the way schools are meant to operate. You resolve problems because there's 500 of them any given day at every one of your schools that are getting resolved at the lowest level possible. You are the highest court. Do not start dealing with things that are below you in hopes of making it better for everybody. It doesn't work. Here's my summary of key takeaways. Open governance, ethics, confidentiality, governance structure, complaints through the proper channels. And then questions and discussion. Happy to talk to you guys. I am running about on time. So.
All right, do we have any questions? This was excellent review. Thank you so much for your time and effort
Yes, ma'am.
and reminders.
Yes, ma'am.
We need to hear it at least once a year, so good job on that.
Happy to do it, and I'll jazz it up and make it different every year. That way you,
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
please, thank you. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank
board.
you very
Once
much.
again, it's my privilege to work with you. It really is. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, welcome aboard.
Thank you, sir.
All right, we're at item 3, reports, information, and discussion, and I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Purvis, for our teaching and learning update.
Dr. Burris is next door. We'll send Ms. Parker to get her. She was waiting for us to get through our board training. So-
Okay.
All right, as they're getting settled, I'll just do a brief introduction. So as you know, Dr. Burris organized and helped us ensure that we had high-quality Read to Achieve summer camps this year. We've asked that she just give us a brief overview of our summer and how that went. So Dr. Burris, take it away.
Good afternoon. So we wanted to kind of give you a rundown on camp from this summer, and thanks to Mr. Benway and Ms. Bruno that came by and visited. We really enjoyed having them. So as you know, reading camp is required by the state, and it's required for us to offer it to our second and third graders. There is the option to offer it to first. However, we do not do that. We just follow the requirement for second and third. We must offer 72 hours of literacy instruction. That is spread out over 4 weeks with 4 days of instruction each one of those weeks. We have 2 weeks in June and 2 weeks in July. We do not have camp the week of July 4th because the odds of getting any of our students to come to school that week are slim to none as people take vacations, and also to honor the teachers that are working as well so they can be with their families, especially with this last Big 250 celebration. And then just to remind you that Senate Bill 387 does leave the decision for sending our students to the parents. So we do everything we can to get them to come to camp, but at the end of the day, it is the parent decision whether or not to send them. So this is just kind of a rundown of the schools. Our locations, we were at Aberdeen, Vast Lakeview, Robbins, Southern Pines, and West End. And you can see the schools that were at each. Aberdeen had Aberdeen students and Pinehurst students. Vast Lakeview was Vast Lakeview, Cameron, and Carthage. Robbins was Robbins, Westmore, and High Falls. Southern Pines was Southern Pines, McDeeds Creek, and Sand Hills Farm Life. And then West End had West End and West Pine. And those were chosen basically because of geography and the closeness to those schools. Costs for summer camp are covered through our PRC 016. That includes the teacher salaries, coordinator salaries, bus drivers, bus gas, materials, and then breakfast and snack are provided for our students. The only one school that we are charged for that is at Vast Lakeview because they do not participate in the free lunch. Yeah. Okay, so a day at reading camp. So reading camp begins at 7:30 and ended at noon. They generally start off with some type of journal writing. When Mr. Benway and Ms. Bruno toured, they saw some of the prompts on the board that they did with their journal writing. And then they had Read Aloud Project and America 250. So this summer we were lucky enough to have our Read Aloud books for America 250 that I'll brief you guys in a little bit. So they had those with corresponding lessons. There's a phonics lesson. Then they do a comprehension lesson. They have their break and their snack. And then again, go back to another read aloud, and then another comprehension lesson. And then there's some time as well for small groups, portfolio work. That's one of the pathways for third grade for Read to Achieve, and some options for writing as well. And then dismissal is at noon. So when we're thinking about attendance, so here are some numbers for attendance for 25-26, and you also see for 24-25. So we invited 464 students to camp. That is second and third graders. There were 230 third graders that were invited and 234 second graders that were invited. And then the number that enrolled was 183 out of that number that was invited. And out of that 183, we had 108 that were second graders and 75 that were third graders. And then I took an average attendance. The first 2 weeks of June, we had about 96 students on average attended camp. At all 5 sites, and then in July we had 91. So we actually had better attendance this year in July, which we tend to fall off because of vacations, than we did last year in July. And then looking at proficiency, so we had 11 students proficient at the end of camp. 10 of those were during camp. 1 happened right before camp, but the parent decided to go ahead and send their child anyway because they were so close to not being proficient. So that's included in that number there. Out of the 10 that occurred while at camp, 2 were through the RTA test, which is the Read to Achieve test. We had 2 that passed through portfolio, and then the remaining 6 were from M-Class. They scored a 725 Lexile or higher on M-Class. It's not noted here because generally we focus on third grade, but I do want to give credit where credit is due. We had 16 second graders that were able to show proficiency during camp. So their individual reading plans were updated with the fact that they're now proficient during camp. So that's not noted here, but I did want to give credit for that. So what happens to third graders at the end of camp are those who did not come to camp who were not proficient in reading. So those third graders are placed in what we call a 3-4 transition class. And so during their 4th grade year, they'll have additional opportunities to show proficiency on Read to Achieve. So they'll continue working on the standards in their individual reading plans, which are contained in Infinite Campus. They'll still be able to be assessed in M-Class or Amplify. They'll still be able to work on their portfolios, so they don't restart their portfolios. They continue working where they started, which is great because we don't want them to have to restart. And then they also get the opportunity to take the Read to Achieve test that they had in June in camp, again in October. So those generally are the ways that students can show proficiency, and all that's by November 1st. On average, my understanding from PAR is that we have about 11 students typically that end up showing proficiency on average in the fall. So what do we do with our students who have their retained label? We continue with their interventions from their individual reading plans through their 4th grade year. We work with them on fluency, on phonics skills, on their writing. Really, it goes down to the student level on what skills they need and where their areas of concern are. Very similar to what we did in camp, where we focus that on small groups and interventions during the school year to try to target those areas to increase their reading ability and their fluency. What questions do you have?
I have a couple.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry if I was trying to open a file to take notes and I may have missed it if you said it, but give us an idea on proficiency by November. What's the success rate there?
Generally, we add about 10 students is what PAR has told me. I don't know what that exact percentage is, Dr. Dahl, off the top of my head to do the math with who's left. But on average, we add usually about another 10 students is what they shared with me.
So 10 or 11 in camp and then another 10
Yes,
during
ma'am.
that transition time.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
And something else I'm curious about that you may not have looked at, you kind of consolidated several elementary schools at one site, and that, of course, makes a lot of sense. But I was wondering if there might be a factor of familiarity where kids from that school might be more likely to participate than the others. Do you have a feel for that? As you know, so if there's one at Vast Lakeview, do the kids from Cameron show up at the same rate as the kids from VLE?
I would have to go back and analyze that to give you a really solid answer. Just off the top of my head, I think the home site schools probably have a greater attendance, but we do try to recruit teachers from all of the schools for those sites so that when they walk in, they see a familiar face. So like at Robbins, we had teachers from Robbins, High Falls, and Westmore. At Aberdeen, we had a teacher from Pinehurst and from Aberdeen. So Southern Pines, same type of thing. So we try to have teachers so that when they come in, they see a familiar face and it's not so new, because I agree, that can be a little intimidating for a little. But I don't know the exact percentage, but that's something I can figure out.
Yeah, I just, wondered if it, because my gut said the barrier would be lower to go to a familiar place.
Right.
And I just wondered, is that a real concern that, maybe we can find ways to address? And certainly having teachers, familiar faces from the home schools would help.
I will say that our sites are generally our sites that have the higher number of students. So like Aberdeen, Southern Pines, we don't have it at Pinehurst because they don't have as many students. We don't have it at McDeeds because they don't have as many students as Southern Pines. So we do try to strategically do it that way, so the kids that are most likely, the majority that have the most need, are able to be at their home school. But I can find out that information for you.
I was wondering, do you see any patterns of the, struggles for proficiency? Like, the students that struggle to show proficiency, do you see any of the skills of reading that are patterns that, we need to focus on?
So phonics skills.
Yeah, phonics.
I mean, generally speaking, the majority of the students that were at Read to Achieve Camp are who did not, second and third grade, and those that did not pass end of grade were 1 to 2 grade levels below in phonics. So when you're thinking about a second grader, that's kindergarten phonics level. So we can talk about comprehension, we can talk about fluency, but decoding comes first. Knowing how to read the words and then making sense of the words. So that would probably be the number one piece. I will say with confidence that the interventions we have in place in the elementary schools are so well aligned to the science of reading and to our core curriculum, 95%. I think I've said this to you guys many times. So the students are not having to learn a whole different way to do it. So they're not using their working memory and learning a new way. It's the same way, just more intense.
That's good.
And research shows that that's the best way to approach it.
We just need to give them more time, but they'll get
Some
it.
of them just need more
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
They really just need more time.
Okay, thank you.
I just had a quick
Good.
thing. So to follow up on what Amy was saying, I had the same thoughts as far as recruiting kids and getting more kids in. Do you have any idea before school lets out? Do you know who the teachers will be? Because to me, that could be a really good method of bringing those kids in, is knowing who the teacher is from my school and then reaching out and seeing if they can kind of get kids to
I
come.
love that idea to try to push that. We do know who the teachers are. In fact, we actively recruit teachers with EVOS growth data. That's solid, and they actually get a bonus for teaching at Read to Achieve Camp as part of an initiative to get them to agree to do so. So that's a great idea.
Yeah, it might be good to have the
Yeah.
teachers reach out to the families and just
Yeah.
say, hey, it's me.
Yeah, I'll be there.
I'll be there. Yeah.
You'll see my face. And they may already do that. I may just not be aware of it. Knowing our teachers, they probably do. But that's a good thing to put in place.
Yeah. Hi, Dr. Burris.
Hi.
We may have touched on this from one of our visits.
Okay.
Have we made any provisions to fill the gap between the end of RTA and the beginning of school to sustain that progress you've made?
So no, not officially, but I'm glad that you brought that up because that's one of the things that I'll be looking at with our data for this year is when we get our beginning of year data and iReady, I'm very curious to see where the students fall compared to where they were at the end of the year and where they were at camp to try to get an idea how much camp really helped them and then what we might need to do differently, but also to kind of see what that gap might look like. But officially, sir, we do not.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Rachel, what a job you are doing. It was one of the best mornings I had all summer. Those teachers were wonderful. It was wonderful to see. And the Celebration of America 250, those books are phenomenal. And I was so happy to see that you are using them. The teachers have told me that the kids really like it. I thought you did the best job ever. I thought it was absolutely terrific. Those kids are going to read. They are. It was great.
Thank you, Mrs. Bruno. The credit should go to the teachers and the coordinators. They did the hard work.
Could I follow up with a paper I've developed for this thing? Each of you should have a copy of this, I think, by now. Anyway, by background, in terms of background, reference one refers to the legislation, and reference two refers to the testing for RTA. At reference one, Read to Achieve, Summer Reading Camp is mandated by the North Carolina General Assembly legislation to assist students deficient in reading at grade 3 proficiency level. In July 2026, I visited each of our MCS RTA summer reading camps. The program is a critical second, and for many, last chance to restore progress in reading proficiency. This is my 4th year visiting RTA. My sense this year was of a better organized and focused RTA effort, which featured the use of quality America 250 materials as the teaching medium, into which the students resonated. This enhanced both teaching and learning, in my view. In discussing measures of progress with teachers, I found that the Department of Public Instruction online support for the in-progress RTA ceased midway through the program. The explanation was that DPI shut down for scheduled maintenance each year at this time. Online diagnostic tools available at the start of RTA were, therefore, not available to teachers at the conclusion of the program. I am told that this has been a situation for the past several years. Discussion. Teachers have been forced to solve this problem for several years by choosing workaround test vehicles at the conclusion of RTA. These are less consistent, less accurate than using RTA testing at both the start and finish of RTA. In accordance with this legislatively mandated role, DPI should provide the online tools needed to support the full duration and scope of RTA. Maintenance is a continuing feature of any online system, typically programmed to permit mission-essential operating hour activities. My recommendation: prepare an MCS board letter to DPI outlining this shortcoming and citing their legislative responsibilities to fully support RTA. Provide info copies to each of our state legislators. Absent a remedy by DPI, engage our legislators fully to resolve this validated support requirement. And that concludes my paper, and I hope we can pursue that. Thank you.
I'd like to thank my colleague for recognizing this and calling it to our attention. Dr. Burris, is this more or less the way things are, that there's testing through DPI that becomes unavailable partway through the camp?
Yes, the Read to Achieve assessment, which is the state assessment, so it's in place of the end of grade during camp. That our access to be able to take that test ends really the first week of July, because we don't have camp the first week of July. So we then had to assess on the 25th of June, which still allowed for 2 additional weeks of teaching that were going to occur in July. Ideally, I would have loved to have provided the assessment on the last day or next to the last day of camp, so they could have had a full, because when I look back to see who was proficient, the majority, almost all of them, only had missed maybe 2 or 3 days of camp the whole time. So that shows that attendance at camp helps with proficiency. But because of, as Mr. Benway pointed out, because of their upkeep or
Maintenance.
whatever it is that they need to do, they have to shut it down. I do realize, and then it reopens around the 17th of July, but camp is closed for us. We're done with camp at that point, or the following week. The week after we close, they open it back up. But I do realize there are year-round schools all over the state. There are other calendars all over the state. So I know that if a year-round school starts in July, by law, they have to give the beginning of grade test during a certain window. So whatever they needed to do to the system probably has to be upgraded or updated to fix that. So I know that there's other pieces beyond just our piece, but it would have been amazing to have been able to give that Read to Achieve assessment near the end of camp. We can show it 2 other ways, which the majority of our students did, through portfolio and M-Class. That was actually the majority of the way, but I'm always curious if it had been later in camp, how much better that piece could have been.
This is a DPI management problem, pure and simple. And thanks very much for working it around so adeptly.
If this is something that our collective board is interested in, then between now and next Monday, Dr. Burris and I could try to draft a formal resolution that could be adopted by the board to request that DPI take a look at the maintenance schedule, so that Dr. Burris next summer and her facilitators would have access to that. If that's something that you all feel we could do, then she and I could work on drafting that. It would not need to be a long resolution, but something from our collective board, if that is something that is of the interest of the board.
This also points to the general philosophy of supporting a mission requirement. You juggle things to make things happen, period. No excuse. So, anyway,
Well,
I hope this helps clarify that point.
I think it would be great. to
Should
have
we
a
discuss this
resolution.
now?
Yeah, what do you think, Dr. Dodd?
I would be in favor of, this board sending a communication from us on this matter. We've got a whole bunch of people. I mean, yeah, they're creative with their workarounds, but they're putting a lot of effort into helping develop these kids and get them on track to move along with their peers. And we all know how important reading is. They should have the tools at their disposal. Maybe some kid doesn't have the executive function to do a portfolio. I don't really know what's involved in these portfolios, but they should have every opportunity to pass the assessment. So it makes a difference to the kids, and it makes a difference as far as validating the work of our people. So I would be in favor of it.
I'd agree. I'd assume other counties, we're not the only one that this is affecting, so I would assume that there may be we can do from us, but maybe it's something we can model for other counties if they wanted to do the same and share with them.
All right, we'd appreciate your, I know you're good with this, Ms. Bruno. All right, thank you so much. All right, and this might be you again.
It
me.
is.
Teaching
We
and
have
learning
Dr.
update.
Burris again, and she's bringing forward to us just an update about our America 250 curriculum for the fall of this year. We just have asked her to share, so you know what we're going to be covering in our schools as we head into this year at America 250. Dr. Burris?
Okay, so based on the resolution that this board passed back in September of '25, I would like to give you an overview of our America 250 project, Let me first start by saying this is Diane Fay's baby. She is our social studies specialist, and she has poured herself into this. She is the one who has curated the book lists. She has helped create the lessons. She has come up with the announcements. So really, all credit needs to go to Diane. I'm just delivering the message in the package that she has created. So the goal, Fay, F-E-Y, Diane Fay. So the goal is to celebrate the semi-quincentennial of American independence by moving beyond isolated activities and really looking towards a deep historical understanding and civic engagement. So the way that we did this is through a curriculum-friendly approach that integrates social studies themes into existing instruction to help students be able to make connections between historic ideals and their daily lives. So
Wait, excuse me,
yeah.
Rachel. What does curriculum friendly mean?
it's just easy for teachers to be able to deliver without a lot of prep. What
okay.
we didn't want to do is give them the read aloud books or give them the lessons and say figure it out.
Okay.
So we really tried to make it where it was easy for them just to take it and roll with it and not disrupt their. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, of course. So here are the themes for the fall semester, and we're focusing on this fall. So August and September, we're looking at the Declaration of Independence and U.S. Constitution ideas. In October, revolutionary events and their impact on outcomes. November, diverse American voices and contributions to independence. And then December, we're looking at symbols of America, focusing on unity and civic identity. So the way this is going to be implemented, okay, all grade levels, K-12, they'll have a daily announcement, and I think those was linked into your documents. Well, they'll do some type of declaration spotlight weekly as kind of the starting point. And then for K-5, they have read aloud books, and I brought some examples for you if you wanted to check those out, but I do have to take them back, Miss Bruno, because I know you always like to take my books, but I got to get them back to Diane so she can get them to the schools, but they're beautiful books. And we're doing that K-5, and so they have the read aloud sets with the aligned lesson plans and writing activities and connections to those monthly themes. And then 6-12, there are lesson plan integrations between ELA, between English and social studies, using primary and secondary sources, which is wonderful for our secondary students to be able to look at those secondary and primary sources and be able to make arguments and analyze them. It takes a whole different kind of thinking, which is actually pretty fun. Questions that you have about America 250? We're very excited.
I think it's fantastic. I read some of the announcements and looked at some of the resources that you shared, and it's just, I wish I was a student in school right now so I could hear it too. So I'm really excited to hear it and see it and visit. So when it's going on,
It was a
so
labor
great
of love.
job.
It was a labor of love. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Diane's vision. So credit goes where credit's due.
Mhm.
Let me put this on. I'm so thrilled with this. This is important, and the way these books integrate the writing and the reading and the thinking behind it. I loved it. Great job.
It was
Really good job.
It was a great test in Read to Achieve Camp, because what we did is we basically took the third grade books and gave them, to the third grade. So they'll see different books next year, but we kind of moved it back a year. So like our second graders got the second grade books before the second graders this year, and they'll get the third grade books when they go to the third grade this fall. So it was a really nice way to kind of test them out and see how it rolled, and it was really successful. So we're very excited.
We can't wait to hear. Yeah,
Of course.
it's great. Tell everybody we said thank you.
I will.
An article in the paper about
Yeah. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Thank you, ladies. And at this time, we'll take a 5-minute break. return to open session, and we're at item 4, pending action discussion, beginning with our exceptional children's contract for services 2627. I'll turn it over to Ms. Purvis.
Thank you, ma'am. We have Mr. Neil Waters here, our Chief Administrator for EC Services, and he's going to talk with us about a request for contract for home care, nursing care today.
Thank you, Ms.
Neil?
Purvis. Yeah, this one is a little bit different. We dealt with this last year, and this is with the same student. Due to the Senate Bill 77, which Session Law 2025-40, that the North Carolina General Assembly passed last July, indicated that families who have skilled nursing at home can, if it's the same rate or less, can request and have the schools use that skilled nursing agency if they have that nurse available to provide school services. And we've used that successfully over the past year. And I'm coming before you with the next contract for Bright Horizons Home Care. I'd hoped to roll it in with the others last month, but we got it back from them during the month of July. So this is for one student, and it does meet the same needs that we talked about, where if the student is not present, and in this case, we don't want to avoid the person identifying information, but in the one student's case, we did have several days missed this year where we were not paying for services on those days when the student was absent. So this is a maximum amount at that $75 an hour rate, and it does allow us to meet that student's needs specifically through funding through this contract with Bright Horizons Home Care. And I'll entertain any questions that you have.
All right, I think we're good. Thank
Thank
you,
you
sir.
so much. Thank you.
All right, item B, Moore County Charitable Foundation Award.
All right, so we have Dr. Bridget Johnson here. She's going to answer any questions that we have, but we are happy to share that the Moore County Charitable Foundation has offered a grant in the awarded amount of $75,000 a year. However, our MOU with them is for a total of $225,000 over 3 years. The superintendent, I can accept up to $75,000 a year on your behalf as a board, as a donation. However, this is in one contract. This will cover 3 years of funds to be used for a Refocus Behavior Academy. So I'm going to let Bridget just share a little bit with you of the specifics of how this gift will benefit Aberdeen Elementary.
Absolutely. Is it already on?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Absolutely. So when I was in Student Support Services in January, we received a call from the Moore County Charitable Foundation looking for a way to benefit Aberdeen, the town of Aberdeen. And so the call came to me, which I think is interesting because now I'm in this role.
Meant to be.
But I said, well, let's talk to the principal at Aberdeen Elementary. And so it was Mr. Krinsicki's idea to begin this Refocus Behavior Academy. And essentially this position, we do really well at helping kids in the classroom when they're able to meet expectations and do exactly what we ask them to do. We actually do pretty well too when we have extreme behaviors, when we need like one-on-one support, we need really specialized care, we do pretty well with that. There's kind of a messy middle where how do we help kids that have repeat behaviors, but maybe they just need some reteaching. And so that's what this position will do. This person is the person we have for this year is she has a master's degree in social work. She loves to work with children. She's great at behavior intervention. So she'll be pulling small groups of children and helping them on those specific skills. So the Behavior Academy, there are different academies that I've brought. It comes from a very specific model that we're using. But there are different academies, and so like there's a hands-off academy. That's a great example. So kiddos that have trouble keeping their hands to themselves, maybe are a little bit physically aggressive, how do we reteach those behaviors and give them some replacement behaviors? And so that's what this position will be doing. So we are super excited. I'm happy to carry on the torch that Sean started and make this beneficial to our students and staff.
So we'd be making a motion next Monday for the board to accept this award of $225,000 over the next 3 years to support this position at Aberdeen. And again, so thankful for Moore County Charitable Foundation in memory of Lawrence and Alla Johnson for their willingness to support Aberdeen Elementary and these students.
Question.
Yes, sir.
How many students do you see this serving?
So when it's up and fully running, we anticipate that her position being able to coordinate with the guidance counselor and with the social worker, we hope around 90 to 95 students per week. She also will be pushing into classrooms. This position will be pushing into classrooms and doing whole group instruction on areas where we see this is a need that we're having trouble across the board. So a minimum of 90 to 95 per week, but really when she pushes into those classrooms, it'll be over 100 easily. Yes, absolutely.
Can I ask a detailed question?
Absolutely.
And maybe this is unfair to ask at this point, I'm not sure. But, so is it kid shows troublesome behavior in the classroom, kid gets assigned to a 30-minute intervention, or do the children get a program of intervention so that they get that
Yes.
positive message reinforced over time?
Yeah, great question. So it's the second of those. Similar to how we do academic intervention, when we see a child is struggling with phonemic awareness, we pull them out for a series of lessons on that particular skill until they get it. This is the same thing. We're pulling kids out. We see that this child needs some skills in being empathetic to other people, or maybe they have some bullying behavior. And so it is a small group teaching those skills over time, and then we hope they graduate is the goal.
Thank you. You know, I could feel really good about that, you know, because then you have the opportunity to create that relationship
Absolutely.
during which the child has some trust and the teacher has some credibility, and the lesson is heard multiple times. And
Right, and it's different when we pull kids into the office, we do the same thing, right? As administrators, we have those conversations, but that's typically a one-off, hopefully. So this would be repeated instruction over time on whatever that social skill is that they need to work on.
Such generosity, and, you know, we're really grateful for, you know, for the foundation to share this with us for our students, so congratulations on
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming out to share with us.
Absolutely.
All right, C, fuel requisition for maintenance.
All right, I'll go, oh, here comes
Look.
Dr. Pam Patterson. As you'll remember, and Mr. Tony Sewell, you'll remember we brought this to you from transportation last time. This is the same thing from maintenance. At the request of our auditors, I'll let Dr. Patterson share this with us.
Good afternoon. So if you recall, this one's a lot less than the first one. The first one was with Jason Transportation, where we did approved $840,000 for the year for fuel for the transportation department. And so we're doing the same thing as well for maintenance because it's over $50,000, and the amount is $124,000 out of PRC 803. This was at the request of the auditors, like we discussed before, and this will be for the 26-27 school year in the amount of $124,000. And if you have any questions, got Mr. Sewell right here with me, so he can answer them.
Put me in the hot seat, right?
All right,
Anything?
hearing none, I believe we're fine.
Question.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, there's
Mr.
one.
Benway.
Yes,
How's pricing looking with the market the way it is?
it's up and down. Actually, right now, looking at what the last couple of loads that we bought, it's probably up 15%, 20%. And so one of the things that's going to help us as far as the amount that we use with January coming in and the SRO changing over, then that'll help us out because that much fuel won't be, going towards them. So that will help take some of the sting out of it, and hopefully in the next few weeks, maybe everything will be done over there and our prices will get back down where they should be.
Great.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Dr. Patterson. Thank you, Mr. Sewell. Appreciate you guys.
All right, now we're moving to item D, bus driver compensation increase.
We are really excited about this. Mr. Nelson has worked closely with Dr. Patterson and Ms. Edmonds to take a look at how we might raise our salary for bus drivers. This is in an effort to ensure that we recruit drivers, and I'll let Mr. Nelson share the goal and Dr. Patterson here as we move forward.
So I've just mentioned quickly that the approximate cost for this would be $300,000 out of PRC 056, which are state funds, and Mr. Nelson's going to give you more detailed information.
All right. As you all know, I mean, we've been short drivers for a while. All right. We've been short drivers for a while. Started digging into it, looking at some things that we could fix. Of course, driver pay becomes a highlight. We did the survey. We saw a lot of, I want more money. So by doing this, we're looking to hopefully, you know, decrease some route times, get some kids off the bus quicker, you know, hopefully not overwork our drivers. And that our drivers have stepped up all year last year and covered things that, you know, went above and beyond and did a fantastic job. But, you know, we need to take care of them. And the proposal I put together, I feel, is everything we could put at it, we threw at it to make it the best we could for them. And they deserve it, but hopefully this will fix our issues.
So as we take a look at this, board members, over the last couple of years, Mr. Nelson has taken a look at where his 056 budget ends. And so at the end of each year, you know, what are the funds that he has left out of those state 056 funds? And in reality, he has purchased a lot of equipment that we've been able to do, a lot of supplies, a lot of gear. But at this point, as he's looking at this trend where we have this amount left each year, he knows he and Ms. Edmonds have looked at it and said, we can sustain this raise. So Charlie, if you would, please click on the comparison chart. So when we look at this increase, and you'll scroll down, Mr. Batchelor, till we get to right here. So you can see starting salary is currently $16.70. The total pay for 26-27 with that 3% increase and then the new raise would be $20 an hour as a starting salary. And then, Mr. Batchelor, if you'll scroll all the way to the end, our top pay right now is $20.71, and top pay would be $24.15. The goal here is not to just recruit new drivers, but to recruit some drivers who already have their CDLs, who may be working for other folks, so that we have a competitive salary in comparison to other districts and other places around us that utilize folks with their CDL. So thank you, Mr. Nelson, Dr. Patterson, Ms. Edmonds, for putting this together. Again, this comes at no local cost to the district. This is a state 056 cost that we will be able to sustain with those state funds.
And I'd like to mention too that Jason's done a great job getting some really good mechanics. By the end of this past year, you know, we upped that pay, and that worked out good for us. So he'll be using less and having to contract things out. So that's going to save some money, which will help fund this as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
And thank y'all for that, because that has got us an awesome group of mechanics.
Well, excellent problem solving and figuring out and looking at the situation and how we can make it better. And what about marketing? How are you going to market this?
Well, that's part of the strategic plan, is to get that starting pay to the $20, because that's going to look appealing whenever you post it out there. We put a sign out front that says, hiring bus drivers, starting pay $20. It looks better than the $19.90 or the, you know, let's start it at $20. So that's part of the plan. So as soon as this is approved, we're going to blast it everywhere we can blast it to try to get in as many drivers as we can, because unfortunately right now we're looking at starting the year with less drivers than we ended the year with.
Yeah.
And it just, the numbers don't work. The math don't math. Like, you know,
Right,
I'm trying to make it work, but
Yes.
you know, you can only do so much with what you have. So we'll do the best we can with what we have, but hopefully this will be we can get this thing fixed, you know, within the first semester of school.
Can't wait to hear the results.
And Mr. Batchelor will be working this week to kind of prepare things to be ready to go out to market this as soon as the board approves it next week.
Okay.
I
Sounds like a
had
plan.
your sense of this is competitive as far as other areas. We hope that this is competitive. So your sense is that $20 an hour is a good competitive rate.
So I did a lot of research into this, and I looked at it, and I could have went up a little bit and been competitive with other districts, but I needed to be competitive enough to get those people to drive into Moore County. So I had to go a little above the market to say, hey, Hope County, hey, other counties, come see us.
Yeah, that's
You
smart.
know,
I like
and
that.
that was kind of, you know, my goal was to be above the market because I'm gonna have to get these people to drive in, because unfortunately, the people don't live in Moore County that are gonna come in and drive our buses.
So this puts us at the top of the market.
Good, awesome. Other question was, remind me, how do the CDLs get paid for new drivers?
That's a state paid program.
Okay.
We cover the cost through our state funds for like the physicals and the actual licensing process.
Right.
But the training, all that's provided by the state.
New driver doesn't have to pay for anything. as far
No
as
driver, no, they don't have to pay. Now they'll have to pay out of pocket for their license when they go to DMV, but we reimburse that.
Gotcha. Okay. And then the last thing I'll just say is I love this. I think it's great. And obviously our next step is to do better for all of our employees. And so further conversation on that throughout the year, but really looking forward to doing more for all employees, not just our bus drivers, to keep the best and brightest. So thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
and
you so much.
Thank you from me as well. This is an obvious need, so it's good to have a strategy to address it.
Thank you,
All right,
guys.
Thank you. All right, item E, first reading of new and revised policies.
So we're bringing these to you today. As you know, in the proposal we shared about our meetings moving forward, the goal for this year in terms of policy would be to bring the first reading of policies to the board. We'd then have a policy committee meeting, and then the next month, we'd approve those policies. However, with the budget, there were some policies that needed to be put in place prior to school starting. So we've asked Mr. McCormick, there are a couple that had to be put in here, and then I know I've already shared with you the changes we needed to make to the grievance, which is just minor. So I've asked Mr. McCormick to come in, share these with the board today. These will be policies that we need to approve on Monday. So we won't have a policy meeting on these because of the timeliness of this. These policies dropped July 26th, I believe, the evening of July 26th, and we need to have them in place for school. But moving forward, I just wanted to let board members know, as we get policy updates, we'll present those at the work session. We'll then have a policy meeting, so those can be refined, and then bring them back the next month. Mr. McCormick?
Thank you. Good afternoon, board members. As Ms. Purvis stated, I do apologize for having to pivot. I do apologize for having to pivot from our traditional way of taking care of this, but due to time sensitivity, and we just received part of this update last Wednesday from the State School Board Association. So we did have some policies that we feel we definitely needed to have in place before our school started and our students returned. We do have a long list from the summer update that we feel we'll be able to push until September. So, but we did want to go over these 7 that we feel we do need to put in place at this time. And once again, we are working to align our board policies with the State School Board Association policies. We're already paying them to do this work for us, and it's a lot easier, especially when there's updates, just like when we get down to one of these later policies. It had 8 cross-references, and if our numbers are not aligned with these state board numbers as they come down, it makes for a nightmare. We worked diligently to try to get these prepared for this presentation, and like I said, we're going to work to align with this. I'm sure Brandon wouldn't mind us paying him money to write policies for us, but when we're already paying the School Board Association, we might as well take advantage of that. So as you can see, number 1 is our policy 1740-4010, student grievances. This policy is recommended for repeal and archive and replaced with proposed adoption of 1740/4010 student and parent grievance procedures. So if you can see, moving to number 2, they have essentially, we used to have 2 standalone policies. Our student grievance and our parent grievance policies were each standalone. So the School Board Association has recommended merging these 2. And by doing that, they were basically duplicate policies, just you changed out parent and student. So we're asking, this policy is recommended for adoption to align with the North Carolina School Board Association's model policy to merge these 2. And one component in there as well, we have, when it reaches up to our district office level, those grievances will come to the Human Resources Office, which allows that to come to my office and not have to come to the office of a supervisor of one of our immediate principals. We don't believe that's fair to our principals to ask their supervisors that evaluate them to have to deal with some of those grievances. So to develop some consistency, that all be coming through Human Resources. So that is number 2. That'll be the first proposal recommendation. Number 3, policy 1750 and 7220, grievance procedures for employees. This policy is duplicative of the new proposed updated version of policy 1750-7220 and is recommended for repeal and archive. And then right below it, number 4, we're bringing the policy as recommended for adoption to align with the North Carolina School Boards Association model policy. And once again, that is also going to bring the verbiage of it coming through HR to develop that consistency.
I think, the board may remember me sharing with you guys that, our previous policy, our current policy now, prior to adopting this, had those grievances going to Assistant Superintendent Stephanie Lowry and Deputy Superintendent Jamie Sinan. There's a real gray area there when they are trying to advise our principals on how to handle day-to-day operations at the school and how to supervise and evaluate employees, but then an employee files a grievance. And if an employee files a grievance against a potential supervisor or another colleague, then we have these ladies who have generally already have provided advice all along the way to help those principals in those situations, and then they're handling that situation, which they may have already had prior knowledge about. So this moves that to HR, which just ensures that there is a clean, defined line in terms of investigation. That also keeps Ms. Sinan and Ms. Lowry clear to help principals as they are moving through this process. It's hard to be the investigator of something and also the person who's giving advice to the principal in that role. So this would just put both grievance policies in the HR arena to keep that clean for us.
Okay. At what point are Stephanie and Jamie brought into the loop and informed?
So once that investigation in HR has been all put together, then at that point, HR would come back to Stephanie or Jamie with that whole ball, because they may need to be in on that conversation as it goes back to the principal. But this is just a clear delineation of that investigation is going to be free of anyone who has prior information on that situation.
That makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Number 5, policy 2330. As I heard Brandon allude to in his training earlier, the board meeting agenda, this policy revised to align with proposed new board schedule. You can see the 2 major changes is it changes the proposed agenda will go to the board instead of 3 days, 7 days prior to the meeting to our board members, and then it will stay 3 days before the meetings, before public posting. So that's just a major change with that one. Policy number 6, 2610, our board attorney. This policy is revised to align with the North Carolina School Boards Association model policy. Ms. Purvis, did you have anything to go with that one?
Basically, if we take a look at our policy, you can see it was quite abbreviated. As we move to the school board policy, you will see it's a little more in-depth. This shares, if we'll just read through, first of all, it talks about second paragraph, superintendent may consult with board attorney to carry out operations. Other staff only with prior approval. This just ensures that we maintain a good system of who's contacting when, so that we have a good process for accountability. Superintendent or designee otherwise may be provided, procedures established. The board shall be responsible for and authorized to address and resolve the board attorney, criminal bail bond, so automatically that, criminal bail bond and forfeiture, so we don't have to see him every time, he's automatically there for that. The chairperson of the board will decide for board members when to seek legal advice or assistance on school matters. If an individual member of the board desires to consult directly with the attorney, the board member must notify the chairperson of the legal information to be sought. If it's determined that that legal assistance is necessary and it's not been sought previously for the matter, the board member will be directed to consult individually with the attorney. Questions raised by board members of the board and the attorney's reply will be reported to all board members. And so that is a change. So if we have an individual board member who reaches out to the attorney as approved by our board chair, then that question that was raised, along with the answer that the attorney gives, will then be shared out to the entire board. That just ensures that we are all on the same page, that everybody has transparency, that there are not conversations going from board members to attorney that the whole board is not aware of. The chairperson of a board committee may consult with the board attorney on issues that arise out of and in connection with that committee's work. That inquiry and response will be reported to all board members. So if you're the chair of a committee and you reach out, you get an answer, all board members, not just those that are on the committee, but all board members would receive that response. So this is North Carolina School Board policy, and we are recommending that we adopt the policy as it comes from the state. It just leaves a real clear and transparent view of what's going on with our board members. Questions?
Is this, how long has this been on the books, this certain policy? Is this one that's new, or it's been there and we haven't used it prior?
Well, the last revision was September 14th, 2015. And so this would just be, if you'll scroll down, Charlie, you can see this is just something our district has had their own policy on. And so this is just us adopting what North Carolina School Board has had.
I like it. I think it's very clear. I think it's a good process. I think, I guess it would make sense then that the process and the procedure would be to conduct these via email and not phone, so that there's a record of the request and the response, and that's shared out. So
yes, sir.
Okay, great. That's all I had. Thank you.
All right. And our last one, this is the one that really brings forward some new policy within a revision. It's number 7, Policy 3510, Religious-Based Exemptions from School Programs. And that is adjusting Policy 3510. It's revising that portion, but then it's also bringing in the new bill, which was included in our state budget bill, Senate Bill 257, which was ratified with our budget bill this summer. The biggest change is it adds the piece about the release time for religious instruction. And
Charlie, yeah, if you would scroll down to B.
Yeah.
What is the yellow? Is that something
the
we have added?
Dr.
or-
Dahl, the yellow is where the State School Board Association provides local boards with some flexibility on what they can choose and what they can do. They had their recommendations, and then they have their max. They have their recommendations, but then they have what's allowable. They recommend 1 hour of release instruction per week, up to 4 hours per week. And it also gives the district flexibility to establish a day, a time, when it can be done, the procedures for doing so. And it also allows the district to add on, to be eligible for release time, a student must be passing any class they would be missing during that requested time.
So as the policy was written, when we received it, it was released for 1 hour. However, as Mr. McCormick and I looked at just the geography of our county, and, you know, if our students are being picked up and traveling somewhere and then returning to school, an hour was really not a sufficient amount of time to sometimes reach where they're going and be able to have a 30 or 45-minute meeting and then get back. So we extended that to 90 minutes. In an effort to ensure that we comply with this policy and that we have students have the ability to do this as the state intended, but also to ensure that teachers are not missing 2 or 3 students from every class all throughout the day, because although this may be 1 or 2 in the beginning, this could be multiple groups that decide to provide this for kids. We don't want teachers having 2 or 3 pulled first period and 2 or 3 on Tuesday and 2 or 3 on Thursday. So we've defined that release time religious instruction shall be 90 minutes. It shall be scheduled for the final 90 minutes of each Friday during the school week. When school is not in session on a Friday, the instruction shall instead be scheduled during the final 90 minutes of the last instructional day of that week. So if we're not in session on Friday, it would be Thursday if that's the last instructional day. And then we added number 5, which we are allowed to do so, that to be eligible for this release time instruction, a student must be passing any class they would miss during that time. And so the yellow, Dr. Dahl and board, is just what we have added as a district to ensure that we have some alignment with the time and that our teachers know when those students will be pulled. And we feel like this is not going to be a hindrance to any group, as this is brand new. Nobody has really planned yet to do this. So if our board adopts this on Monday, then any group who plans to pick students up from school can plan around this schedule that's adopted by the board.
And once again, that we just felt this was very time sensitive, that we did need to have in place, because I believe there already are some agencies that have been inquiring about this. So we wanted to have something in place. And like a lot of stuff in education, we can evaluate it, and if need, policy committee can look at it again if it needs to be tweaked. But that's why we have that flexibility in yellow. But we just wanted to make sure that we had something in place when the students came in. And just like all of these board policy, all these state board rec policies, it gives us a great starting point and builds consistency across the state as we work with other LEAs as well. But there is still some flexibility in some of this, but that'll be taken one case at a time. And but we do look forward to continuing this alignment. From what I can tell so far, working with Cindy Parker, we're probably about 84% aligned already. So we just got some revisions to do. We had a team this summer that got together. I've got working on a big notebook to bring to you guys to share at the board retreat, and then also bring forward to the next policy committee meeting. But once again, I do apologize for having to break our normal procedure, but we felt it was needed. Thank you.
That's okay. Mr. McCormick, we've got a question from Mr. Hensley.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hensley?
I have a question. Am I on?
Yes, you are. Go right ahead.
Perfect. Again, I'm a bit behind, but on number 5, about a student must be passing any class in order to participate in this program, what is our standard to participate in other extracurricular activities such as sports? Is it just getting your chin over the bar and getting a D-, or do they have to have like a C average to participate in other extracurricular activities?
So currently, yes, sir, they must be passing, which would be a D or higher, according to that 10-point scale. So for students who are released from class early for athletics, they can't be released from 4th period or from that class unless they are passing. So you would be correct.
Okay.
Passing and above.
So this is the same standard we use for athletics and other extracurricular events?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. That was my question.
Any other questions?
I just had a question. You talked about tracking, see how it goes. Is the state going to require any tracking of this? Are we going to do any tracking of our own?
I was just to see how it goes in Moore County, because we are such a large geographic county, and the agencies, I'm sure, are going to work to try to be regional within the county to provide these services, but still it can be tough if you're trying to get from Robbins to Carthage and then have a presentation and get them back. That's another reason we put it on Friday afternoon, proposed Friday afternoons, because that way, if they pick them there, a parent can always pick them up if the group wants to keep them longer. And they can arrange there, but then the ones that need bus transportation, they would definitely, need to get them back in time. But we also chose Friday afternoons because that's traditionally an afternoon that the teachers already know. Students like to get checked out early on Fridays so parents can get out of town, and there's already a lot of distractions there. So we felt it would be easier to provide consistency for the teachers. They're not having to track kids throughout the week and then trying to keep up with makeup work for those students that they have to get taken care of when they all come back. So it's easier to track one day and one time period.
Yeah, but I like that, and I think it makes sense. It'd be good to have a report back to see how it's going. How many kids are taking advantage of it or not. And then I had a general question. You had mentioned a change in the process for policies, and I may have missed something, and I just want to make sure I have it right in my head. So is the method going forward that we'll do first reading at a work session, which combined work session business meeting, and then so the whole board would be exposed to that, and then we'd bring that back to policy, and then they would come to second reading after that?
Yes,
Okay.
and the reason for that is, there have been times that the policy committee does quite a bit of work, and then we get to the full board, and board members have input or ideas of how to tweak things, and then we're having to do that in real time. And so what this will allow is for Andy to share with the entire board, get feedback from the entire board if there are things that the board wants to look at, wants to define more as we've done this. That way, as our policy committee goes into meeting, they have a collective group of thoughts from the entire board, and then they are refining that based on all of the feedback. So hopefully when we get to that final reading where we're getting ready to adopt, it's ready. Instead of, we're here and now we have more board members who have input.
Right.
So hopefully this will allow us that time, that first reading, then we will go to the policy committee, then back the next month for approval.
Well, I like that. I mean, that's a substantive change, so I'm glad to hear that. And so I would assume that would mean if board members have policies that they want to revise or edit, they would need to send that to the chair prior to a first reading of whatever policy they're looking at.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's a good reminder, I think, for everybody. So, and then the other thing I had was prior to those coming, if we could get like just a quick summary of the why behind the changes as we get the first reading, like when it's sent out to us in the agenda, that would just be really helpful because sometimes it's so much easier just to hear that 2 or 3 sentence. Oh, this is why they changed it. Just so we have that in our heads prior to reading. So
Great.
Thank you, Andy.
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
No, sir. Thank you very much. We are going to take a 5-minute recess right now. Thank you. Okay, we'll return to our meeting. Thank you very much. And we're at item F, draft Moore County Board of Education meeting calendar for September 2026 through July 2027. And Ms. Purvis, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, yes, ma'am. I've asked Brandon to stay through this item because if the board has any questions, this is a major change for us, but it is one that we can work within, and I think will be to the benefit of the folks who are supporting our schools. The goal here would be to have one meeting a month. Beginning in September, the recommendation would be to move to one board meeting each month. It would be a combined work session and regular business meeting held on the second Monday of each month beginning at 10 a.m. Although the work session begins at 10, we will not roll straight into the regular business meeting. We want to ensure that we have that regular business meeting always beginning at 5:30 so that the public has a consistent start time. As we shared earlier, you as board members will have adequate time to prepare because the full agenda will come to you the first Monday of the month. You will have until Wednesday at 5 o'clock if you have questions that you would like to ensure are answered at that work session. If you have items that you think we need a little more information on this, if you could get those questions and those suggestions to me by Wednesday at 5 p.m., then that would allow our staff time on Thursday and Friday to revise any presentations or executive summaries. We would then put out that agenda to the public on Friday before that Monday work session. And then, as I said, we would roll straight into closed session at 4 o'clock and then open meeting beginning at 5:30. I was asked the question, what happens if we come to a 10 o'clock work session and we're finished by noon? Well, then the answer would be everybody gets a break. You can go have a coffee, you can go out to lunch, you can do whatever, but we will return at 4 o'clock for the closed session. Most items that we consider each month are pretty routine, things that we are approving and moving forward with. However, if there is a topic that we know will generate public interest or will require additional discussion, such as policies, policies will always be presented first reading, and then they won't be approved until the next month. So they would carry over to the next month. Things that we've had in the past that would qualify for this as well would be our land purchase, the turf project, major upcoming building projects. Those things would be presented at the work session, but then we would bring them back for a vote the next month. It would not go straight into a vote that regular business meeting. That would allow board members time to reflect on it, gather information. It would also allow the public time to reflect on that. If they wanted to come and present at public comment, then they could do so the next month prior to this being put on board action. So this is the recommendation, beginning with our September meeting. Charlie, if you would quickly, do we have that attached on here? I think, Charlie, yep, right here we are. So you can see here the calendar. This would be once a month. As you know, I really am looking forward to ensuring that senior office staff are in our schools at least 3 days a week to support principals and teachers. I think that's very important as we're trying to drive instruction forward and support them in their work. And this will help us. And I do think that our board will enjoy having a streamlined process to our work sessions and meetings.
Question.
Questions? Yes, sir.
Have we looked at moving the closed session to the morning to abbreviate the evening part?
The one reason that we would not do that, sir, is we don't need legal counsel at our work session. And so if we move that to the morning, we typically need legal counsel in closed session. And so he'd be here for the morning and then doesn't need to come back until the regular business meeting. So this would just ensure that Brandon is here at 4 o'clock and we're not required to have him here all day.
You could go to a long lunch with us.
He could, but I don't want to pay him to do that.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right, other comments, questions?
Would we anticipate this slowing anything down at all? Like, if we have things that are deliberative? Because I think, if I remember right, that one of the reasons that we did the work session and then the business right after was so that we could keep things on a quick pace. Do we see any issues there, or?
I think that most of what we do is very routine.
Right.
And so we would not anticipate that we would need a long deliberative time. If we have items, as I said, that we feel like we want public comment on or that the board needs to deliberate on, they just go on the next month. And typically, we're not going to bring you something. We've had one or two, the SROs, right? But that would be a special called meeting, right? So we may have a special called meeting that would then roll into the next one. But I don't foresee, those items are very rare. But I did have Ms. Davis ask that, what if we have something that comes up, like our
Right.
SROs? Well, that'd be a special called meeting.
Okay.
Those would be very rare.
And then, like, if we had, like, for example, like, high school land purchase, that could be something we do a public hearing in between the work session and
The next month's
next
board
month.
meeting.
Okay.
Yes. So the goal would be to present something of that nature at that work session. We'd then hold a public hearing, and then, or if not a public hearing, invite the public to come for comment, or perhaps small groups, whatever we decide to do, and then vote on it the next month.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Mr. McPherson, is there anything you'd like to add to this?
This coming Monday, I will be out of town with my family on a pre-scheduled vacation. I am sorry, it is unavoidable. I would love to tell you that I had your calendar on my calendar before. I did not, but this trip was planned 9 months ago. So you will have the incomparable Katie Cornetto, former State Board of Education counsel and my law partner here sitting at this table. She is phenomenal. We're sitting at the dais. So please accept my apologies, but just know that I think this is a wonderful calendar, but as far as this coming Monday, I will not be here, and I apologize for that.
It's okay. Have a great trip.
Yes, ma'am.
It's important to spend time with family.
Yes, ma'am.
I think this is a great idea. I think this schedule will help us to be more efficient with our time. I think it will be helpful for our staff. I see the benefits of it. I appreciate all the hard work that went into figuring this out. And I look forward to trying it out and making it work. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So we are at item G, school board meeting agenda for August 10th, 2026. And following our policy, all items will move to the consent agenda unless 3 board members request differently. So I'll pause for a minute. Okay. All right, so now we're at item 5, reports, information, and discussion, and we can't wait to hear about capital updates. Dr. Patterson and Ms. Purvis.
Right, so Dr. Patterson is going to share some current capital projects that were completed over the summer. She's going to also give us an update on projects of interest like our first elementary IT building and the new high school. So Dr. Patterson, take it away.
I'm sorry, excuse me. I didn't see a red button, so I didn't think it was on.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hensley.
Hold on. Yes, David. So, which items are not going to be on the consent agenda on Monday?
No one mentioned anything, Mr. Hensley, so all of
Oh,
them
well,
will be
I
on.
missed it. Bus
Okay.
drivers, policy, and meetings
Are there 2 other?
need to not be on the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hensley. Are there 2 other board members that agree with him? Mr. Hensley, I'm sorry, but I don't hear 2 other board members that agree. So at this time, we'll move them to the consent agenda.
Huh. Okay, that'll be a fun meeting.
Thank you, sir.
I really think we ought to give the public an opportunity to provide input on policy changes, bus driver pay, and the rewickering of our meetings. I'm sad to hear that no other board member wants to give the public time to comment on those before we vote on them. But if that's the decision of the board and that's the way you guys want to do it, then I guess we'll go down that route. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, capital updates.
Good afternoon again. We're ready?
Yep, take it away, Dr. Patterson.
One up, okay. Okay, oops, I have an error glitch. Okay, so I wanted to just show you a few of the projects that we have completed or in process of completing this summer. The first one, these are actually canopies that were installed for all the ramps at Northmore High School. Remember, the original canopies were built in 1965, and this is in every entryway. Kids that didn't need a wheelchair access or any help with getting in the buildings had to go out into the weather. And so I think you can see the old canopies there. This doesn't have a little thing on it, but you can see the brand new canopies. You can see the old canopies. So in every situation, the students who can walk, and go straight in, they would go in under the canopies that way and to the left. And then all the other children that needed assistance would have to go out in the weather, and you can see the new canopies. So those were put in the summer. That's been complete at every entranceway at Northmore that has that same situation. Okay, so that had a little check mark on it. It's not showing up there, but it did. On mine anyway. Click my okay. All right, and so these are this is the carpentry and automotive roof at Union Pines that you guys approved the contract for. Even though I'll be clear, it was less than $50,000. We planned on paying for this with lottery funds, and because this is, no, we did pay for this with lottery funds. I'll get to that in just a minute. So this was lottery going and if you click one more, you'll see the finished product. So that's going to be really nice. It won't be leaking this next year. Child nutrition roof. Now, you guys approved that one. It was less than $50,000. However, lottery funds cannot be pulled down for buildings where children do not go inside. Okay, so anything that's administrative, which would be child nutrition, buildings here, central office, etc. So that one is complete as well. You can see the original versus the new.
So that was paid with capital funds.
Capital funds, that's correct. Northmore Canopy. So this was, we're learning very carefully that we need to do before pictures and after pictures. And so we've done a little bit of that here, but this was actually an after once they ripped the top off of those 1965 canopies, and it is not complete. This is a huge project. If you remember, it was well over $200,000 that was used to lottery funds, and they are still in process. This bottom right photo that you see here, you can see how dingy and yucky that looks underneath. That's all going to be nice and white whenever they're finished, but they're getting close. You can also see the canopies over the handicap ramps as well. You see that top of that, so it'll look good up there.
And you guys will remember that's a restoration project instead of a new project. You know, when you restore something, it always takes longer than just pulling out and putting brand new. But we were advised that because these are original, still 1965, we'd never get that quality to last again. So restoring these was the better option.
Yes. There was a lot of conduit and other things running along. That's why I chose one of those photos. So it was a big job for those folks.
Wasn't there some drainage remediation that went along with this?
There was some other there's some other projects prior to that, some retaining walls that have been put in place. We may have to continue looking at that as well. There's still, after the tremendous rain that we've had recently, there are still some places that are washing some, but yes, we're continuing to work on that. Okay, the turf. It's not complete, but this was some of the beginning here after the old grass had been removed, the sod. And what do you see around the outside edges is the drainage. Those are ditches that have a lot of drainage in them with the rock. And then you'll see on the left, that was the finished product after all the rock and everything was put down. And then the turf, they started that, I believe it was last Thursday. The rain kind of slowed them down about 4 days, being able to get the products delivered and started. And then this is what I received yesterday. So Mr. Garner's been out there taking photos and meeting with them. It's not quite finished, but the target date is by August the 15th. Okay, the Data Operations Center. Actually, I was responding to Chris's email from Retson, and I want to be clear that there is no delay on Retson's part. So we went through multiple sites and looking at different types of what it was going to take to be able to put the IT Data Operations Center on a site. We agreed on Union Pines because of the topography and wetlands that kind of surrounds that area. We first, and you have already mentioned this to you before, we are still waiting on the topography survey. Because there are wetlands close by, not on this property, but, well, it's on the property, but, you know, it's not on the site where we're going to put it. We still had to do a wetland survey. So that added another additional survey. Those things take time, and we're still waiting on the reports from that. After that, Retson is waiting on both of those surveys. Once that we have those and they have those in place, then they'll be able to really finalize the contract, the design, and then after that we'll be doing the clearing and preparing of the site. I will tell you that we did decide to do some of the contracts, some of these folks separate from Retson because it was going to cost us less money, and so we do have some local folks doing the survey, not only this one, but also on the one at Carthage, which I will mention just in a few minutes, which we have received. That survey has made it to Pinnacle. And so the clearing and preparation of the site, we have somebody just chomping at the bits, ready to go clear that land. So that'll happen once we get this information back. And then after, sorry.
Just to be clear, that is something I appreciate Dr. Patterson and Bradley Garner doing, which is basically subbing this out for us. The wetland survey, the topographical survey, the preparing and clearing the site, because otherwise we'd be paying a premium for someone else to manage that. So Dr. Patterson and Mr. Garner will be managing that so that we get everything ready, and then Retson is ready to do the build. But I do appreciate them subbing this out for us because that's a significant savings.
And it could take longer as well.
That's
by
right.
doing it that way. Any questions about that piece? Okay, with Carthage, we're really excited that after the students got out, we had this Bloodhounds, and that's the name of the company. And they do the utility locating, and they did a great job with that. And they say they find everything. And then the survey, as I mentioned, we're using the same person for the IT building. This one came first because that's just the way it happened to fall. And so that's been complete. Those reports have been sent to Pinnacle. We are meeting with them face-to-face here on August the 11th to go determine next steps. And that was all about the topography and how far we can set the school back before we could really go any further with, you want to try to set it back as far as you can without getting in any type of retaining walls, just so you'll have more of the queuing that in front of the school. So that's where we are with Carthage Elementary, and the principal's chomping at the bit too. And I told him as soon as we have more information, I think I've told you this as well. I did go out and talk to the faculty at a faculty meeting at the end of school, and they were really happy that they received what little information I could provide. I'll do that again once we have some solid plans, and they will obviously be involved in a lot of the decision making.
Can you remind me, I guess, and the public, the target dates for Carthage and the phasing and all that?
Well, we had a target date with the original plan. So the goal now would be, if we can complete the architectural plans and get everything scheduled, we would love to break ground by next summer, right? We would love to say that it will happen faster, but number one, we have to find out exactly where we can put this. Number two, this August 11th meeting with Mr. Garner and Dr. Patterson will be all about, okay, what can we do within this footprint? And from there, we will be utilizing one of their prototypes, but you'll remember we had one prototype, which was a one-story building. We'll be moving to a two-story prototype, and we need it to be in an L shape to fit on that area. I know that the previous plan took us about 6 months to get to the final creation of this is what the plan needs to look like. So there'll be several iterations of that because, first of all, from the operation standpoint, they'll have to get what's needed, and then they'll take that to the school improvement team to kind of refine, take it to the teachers to take a look at the small details. So we'd be looking at that. Once you get that final plan, then you're looking at a 3 to 4 month window of permitting. And so realistically, you're looking at this school year to get the final architectural plans and the permitting, and the goal would be, you know, by the time school gets out next year to start doing site prep, breaking ground. The goal would be during the summer months that we can get the fences up to separate what campus will be going and the new build. We have to have a couple mobile units brought in because we will tear down some of those buildings as we create the new ones. So next summer would be that time that we mobilize the mobile units, get the fencing up, so that everything's ready when we start back to school. We really would not want to do any of that work while students are in session.
Right. And making sure there's heat and air.
That's
That's gonna
right.
be a big project as well.
Yeah. So
In the
we've got some
current
boilers
building.
in some areas that are gonna be coming down, transferring that to other areas, you know. So there's some work to do, but, we do need summer to make sure that we get that right before we have kids on site during a build. We just wanna make sure that we have everything, safe and secure.
So if things go well, break ground next summer.
And you're looking at about 18 months to get a school built. So if we break ground next summer, then you'd be looking at a mid-year of the next school year move-in, realistically.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Forgive me if I've missed it, but do we have an aerial photo of the footprint we're looking at?
Not yet. That is what, we have a preliminary idea of what we're trying to accomplish, but we didn't know if we could accomplish it without that utility locating report and that topographical survey. So Pinnacle's gonna come in based on those reports, meet with Bradley and Dr. Patterson to say, can we do what we were hoping to do? So her next update, we hope, would bring us back just a color block of, hey, here's where the building would be. It might, you know, it won't show us what the interior is gonna look like or what the plan would be, but just what the footprint on that campus would be. But at this point, sir, we really don't know if what we're hoping to make happen is gonna be a reality.
So the topographic report will drive whether this is a single story or a double story?
It'll have to be a double story.
It'll have
We
to.
can't fit on that property a single story and get the amount of square footage we need, and get anything off of the road. And so the goal here would be to have a two-story building, which would allow us to then take down the interior of the yard, which would be the existing area, and get some of that parking and some of that queuing day-to-day off of that Rockingham Street and give them a little more area in there.
And Mr. Benway, you know, that drops off tremendously at the backside, behind the school. It drops
Yeah.
straight down. That's the purpose of the survey, the topography survey. And, you know, Town of Carthage offered us some land over there to the right, but until we know the results of that, we won't be able to really offer any suggestions.
Would there be any flexibility as far as getting more area to move students to, like in mobile units while we do the construction? Or is that all part of that conversation of?
And that's part of what we're trying to do, is determine, can we take these buildings down and get more area for the new build by adding some mobile units there in front of the cafeteria or over towards the playground, so that we could get more square, you know, more area for that building. And that's all part of this. You know, one of the things we learned is that the septic, municipal septic, goes out the back towards that big drop-off ball field. So there's a lot of things that really have to be rerun, and figure out how to rework all that. But yes, that is the goal, Mr. Johnson, is take down a few buildings on the perimeter of campus. We have some existing classrooms that can be vacant, and it looks like we could put, how many was it, 5 units?
We talked about the mega unit and that the contractor would be able to put that up. I think we discussed that at one of our
We need about 5
meetings.
classrooms if we take down what we're thinking. And so that would be part of the project, but it would just go there on campus, but that would be the goal.
Sounds like a creative
A lot.
problem-solving task. And I
all
wish
right.
you nothing but the best of luck with it.
Thank you. Well, that's what we do, right? We're creative.
Thank you.
I
for
wouldn't be in
that. Oh.
education. Okay, so the next one is the new comprehensive high school. Where are we with that? I have, actually, I have an update as of this morning that's on I think the next slide. But, you know, we're working with ITRI, and the scope and focus is an updated capacity studies for areas 1 and 3, assistance in determining the best general area for a new high school to ensure that you have balanced student populations and clear geographic areas so voters know what to expect when lines are redrawn. So kind of our milestones are ITRI meetings will begin with municipalities in the fall of this year. The target date for the final study is in the spring of 27. Of course, we will share that information with the committee and the board. And on this next slide, I believe, I have a little bit closer of a timeline, which they provided me this morning. So in October of 26, the Land Use Study Planning Department interviews will begin. That's with every single municipality. So if you recall, when we started to do this on the fall of 26 ballot, it was just going to be very interesting because they were steady. I was in every email as they contacted every municipality, the county, trying to get meetings set up. There will be individual meetings with each one of those. So that will start on October 26th. In November, the planning department interviews continue and enrollment forecasting begins. In December, enrollment forecasting work continues. In January 27th, school level enrollment forecast is completed. By February, we'll have optimization of school sites and attendance zones. And by March, the Board of Ed presentation of school level enrollment forecast and high school site prioritization.
So I would just share, you know, I've had, when I'm out and about in the community and at meetings, I've had several folks express concern that, hey, we're really concerned about the new high school creating a less than optimal high school at one of the remaining sites. And I just want to remind everybody that that's the reason we're utilizing ITRI. It is very specific, nitty-gritty work to ensure that when we end up with a third high school on this end, and we pull from Union Pines and Pinecrest, that we have balance across all 3 schools, so that all 3 schools in programs, in demographics, in attendance have a balance. It is not the goal, I don't think, of me or this board to have anybody who travels across lines. We want them traveling from around the school. Instead of moving across an area to get to another area, we want students attending in their area, in their community. And that's why we can't choose a site. We need to first know, if we're going to have 3 balanced high schools on that end, where could we put those schools and have that achieved without busing students a certain distance, but just pulling from their community? And so that's what ITRI is going to be helping us do, is select 2 or more sites that they could say, hey, if you put a school here, then you still have 3 balanced schools. And that's the goal, which is why it's taking us this amount of time to get that specific work. But I do just want to assure the public that that is something that we, as a group, are ensuring that we take a really close look at. And one of the reasons why we don't just pick a site and say, well, there's available land here, let's do it. We need to ensure that we are looking at everything, where those attendance lines would be, and that students are pulled from around the school that they attend and not traveling across one area to get to another area. That makes sense. But it's intricate work.
I'm sorry. The last piece of that would be the sessions, community sessions, in the fall of 27. 3 area meetings is what was mentioned previously whenever we were looking at doing that, 1 in each area for the community and for school level folks. Direct feedback, ongoing through online portals, and then the superintendent advisory groups, those groups that are kind of already in place, that where individuals can provide feedback on the information that ITRI, comes up with. It's important that we're very transparent, that we are giving accurate information out there. And so we'd have like a public FAQ document to ensure the board and staff provide consistent, accurate information somewhere around spring of 28 through the fall of 28 until the ballot. And then media news outlets with social media and the folks with the paper and all, and other news outlets.
And one of the things we would probably suggest to our board is those community sessions in the fall shouldn't just be us giving information. They need to be a public hearing where we give information, but then we allow the public time to respond and give input at those community sessions. So the goal there would be to share with the community and then gather the community's thoughts and input on where we are so far so that then we can move forward.
This is exciting.
It is exciting.
It was a long time coming.
Very exciting and a very big change for our county in a lot of different ways.
Yes.
And so I think getting the public's feedback all along the way is going to be really critical. I think that, I know it's on our facilities plan, but the question will be, of course, what are we making sure we're doing at Pinecrest, Union Pines, at the same time, renovations, modernization. And so I think part of those community meetings needs to be informing them of what our thoughts are on that, what our plan is around that. Because if we're going to ask people to vote for that in November 2028, they're going to want to know what's happening at their favorite schools. So, I mean, yeah. But I love it, and I think it's certainly well past needing to be done. I think we got a grace of time because the bond got moved for 2 years, and I'm glad to see that we're making a plan to take advantage of that time. So.
And I will just remind the board as we look towards, because we don't have that plan yet, as to what will we exactly do at Union Pines and Pinecrest. The one thing we do know, though, is that we need to get this high school finished, because what that will allow us to do is move kids off of Pinecrest and Union Pines, which will then give us the swing space at Union Pines and Pinecrest to move the kids, renovate something, move them back, renovate here. So that swing space is imperative, and we need to make sure that our community understands why are we waiting, because that saves us millions of dollars when we're not having to purchase and have swing space somewhere else. So if we can finish the high school and then following that have a plan for what is next for Pinecrest and Union Pines, because the utilization of that swing space will save millions that then can be put into those projects.
Smart. Very smart. All right, thank you.
Thank you,
All right.
Dr. Patterson.
And we're now at board comments. Do we have anyone with board comments today? It's been a great meeting. I just have a couple of reminders. We have the legislative agenda survey that was sent out on July 30th by Macy Riopel, R-I-O-P-E-L, and that is totally anonymous. And this is the Legislative Action and Advocacy Committee that I participated on a couple weeks ago, and this is the survey that goes to every single board member in the state of North Carolina to find out what you believe individually are the highest level of actions that they need to put on their advocacy agenda, okay, that we will vote on at our conference in November usually, and Cindy. So that is an email. Yes, sir. It says legislative priorities, action needed. So, and it was on July 30. Everyone should have gotten a copy, and it will be totally anonymous. Also, thank you for those that responded to our board retreat invitation. That is August 24th in the morning. And so please respond if you haven't, and let us know that you're available. Everybody's good? Yay, Cindy is giving me a thumbs up. So I look forward to that, and that'll be a great morning when, as Brandon was sharing today, that we'll have that opportunity to talk about items that need our attention. And appreciate you being there too. All right, are there any other comments? All right, hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, do we have a second? All in favor say aye. Aye. Great meeting, everybody. Have a safe evening and safe travels. Thank you.